Okay, so Kai, did I call you Kai or Kai Yuen? Actually, sorry,
Either way is fine. I
okay,
think when I was growing up, my friends call me Kai, but a lot of
Kai.
people in
Okay,
Singapore call me Kai Yuen as well. So either
Kai.
way is fine. Yeah.
Awesome. So Kai, thanks for coming on board with me and really agreeing to do this. I think it's something that me on Hacker Collective side and as also an education provider in Malaysia and someone that believes in education
Yeah.
so much, I think it's a topic that I really wanted to have a chat with you about and really share with the
hmm
audience, right? So
hmm
Kai, maybe you can start off by introducing yourself and sharing with us what you do.
Absolutely. Oh, thanks for having me here. My name is Kai. I'm the founder at Rocket Academy. Rocket Academy is an online coding bootcamp that trains people to be software engineers and guarantees jobs. We have a free introductory course for anyone that's curious about coding, wants to learn the basics. And we also have a paid bootcamp course, which is a 6-month full-time or 12-month part-time course that helps people become software engineers.
No, that's awesome, man. Awesome. And ultimately with even us at the Hacker Collective, right?
Yeah.
We also do boot camps in Malaysia. And the reason
Yeah.
why I felt the need to do boot camps was because I was just concerned with the education level in Malaysia, right?
Mm.
And not that there wasn't boot camps around. There were boot camps around, like Next Academy going on for 3-4 years. And it's like,
hmm
great. But
Yeah.
why is there still a problem with shortage of technology talents, right? So maybe you can share on
Yeah.
your side, what got you started into this thing? Because I'm sure it wasn't new. Tech was around in Singapore. What's your
Mm.
background and what got you started into Rocket Academy?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my background is actually in software engineering. I studied computer science at Stanford. I did an undergrad and a master's in computer science there. I worked as a software engineer in Silicon Valley, in China, in Singapore and Jakarta as well. And a few tech companies like Facebook and Alibaba and Nuna Health and Erudify in Jakarta.
Wow.
And
Wow.
and through these experiences, I realized that everybody struggles to find software engineers. When we were hiring software engineers, we realized, oh wow, it's challenging to find good people. And when I was working in these places and we were we of course we knew boot camps existed and there were boot camps like, but one thing I felt is that generally I felt that people who are coming out of boot camp sometimes lacked fundamentals, lacked grounding in fundamentals.
Yep.
And so I already felt, and I think the market in the industry, or if we ask tech companies about typical bootcamp graduates, I think one of the concerns that often comes up is that there's this lacking in fundamentals, software engineering, computer science fundamentals, naturally because the bootcamp is so short. And when I was thinking of starting a business in 2019, I was looking around at different ideas and I stumbled upon some innovative ideas in the US where the courses were longer and they were online. And I felt that, wow, okay, if the courses are longer, that means we can actually teach more fundamentals. And if the courses are online, it means that we can actually scale this without having to build or renovate or rent a physical center, which allows us to move faster and reach more people. And so I took these concepts and I said, hey, one, companies can't find enough good software engineers. And two, people are hesitant to join the shorter boot camps because they may be concerned that, hey, this may not actually get me the career outcome that I want because it's so short. But at the same time, the university courses are so long and so expensive. So I was thinking, if Rocket Academy can provide something in between, which is longer and more comprehensive than the typical boot camps, but
Yeah.
also shorter and more efficient than the university courses, I think we can provide a great offering that can bridge this talent gap between people who want to become software engineers and the market of employers who want to hire good software engineers.
Yeah. Oh, no, exactly. I mean, everything you heard was, I think right on the head. Even with us, I totally agree with you, the messaging and being the middle ground, right?
Mm,
I mean, clearly there is a market there, right? It's just that,
mm.
we don't know why it took this long, but well, finally you're around and all these years. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see. Yeah.
No, no, that's amazing, right? So maybe tell a bit more about your background. So you worked you worked in the software field for many years, I guess, in America. Was this in America?
Yeah.
Why come back? Why leave that whole amazing job prospect?
Yeah.
America and all those great jobs and great.
Absolutely. Yeah. Silicon Valley is great for software engineers, right? There's some of the highest paid software engineers and people jobs in the world,
Yeah.
are in Silicon Valley working at these well-known tech companies, that the FANG companies, and also all the famous startups that we know of
Mm.
based in the Bay Area and in California. And one of the main reasons for coming back was more personal. It was more of me wanting to spend more time in Singapore, spend more time in Southeast Asia, learning about my roots and identity. Part of that is because just despite the fact that I'm Singaporean, my parents were working in Hong Kong and the US when I grew up. And so I hadn't lived in Singapore for an extended period of time except during my national service.
Mm.
And going to uni after my national service in Singapore, I knew that I wanted to come back to Singapore at some point to live, to get to know Singapore better, spend more time with my extended family. And after a few years of working in Silicon Valley, I felt like the time was right. I felt like the time was right for a few reasons. One is I felt like after working for a few years as a software engineer, I had so-called learned how to learn. I felt confident in my learning abilities, such that even if I were to move back to Singapore away from Silicon Valley, the so-called epicenter of tech, I would still be able to learn independently and grow, whether as a software engineer or in the tech industry.
Yeah.
The second was that I felt like there was, and this is all beyond the personal reason. So I think the main reason is the personal reason, but then beyond the personal reason, second is I felt confident in my learning ability. And then the third reason is actually the opportunity that I felt was available in Southeast Asia, because I felt like as people are getting internet right through smartphones for the first time, they have to be demanding more software services that can't necessarily be provided by the multinational companies that are based in the US or China. And I felt like being a software engineer who can build these kinds of services, there would be opportunity for me to develop something that serves the market here. And so that's why those three reasons, right? The personal reason, the feeling confident in my abilities, and also the market opportunity. I think those were the reasons why I made the move to come back and pursue something to try and also to do something here and give back.
No, that's really amazing. Given you have that interesting backgrounds being from America, working in tech in Silicon Valley and in good companies, and choosing to come back to Singapore, can you share your perspectives, to anyone who's considering working in America or from Singapore or from any other country in Southeast Asia? What's the differences between America and Singapore? What's the working culture, career progression like in the tech field, especially, right?
Yeah, I would say because the tech industry is more mature in Silicon Valley. I can't generalize for all the US, but in general, Silicon Valley, the tech industry is more mature, and so there are more established career progressions for people to go through. So if you go to most companies, right, I think maybe Google was one of the first companies that pioneered this leveling system for engineers, and now even a lot of the startups, they adopt very similar leveling systems. And these leveling systems they're usually numbered. So you might start at something like E3, which is like engineer 3, and it goes up to something like E7 or E8 even. And where E5 is the point where, okay, actually, if you got to E5, you could actually stay at E5 for the rest of your career and you'd still be successful.
Yeah.
So there are these mature leveling systems where it's very clear what you need to do to achieve the next level, to get to the next level in terms of your output at the company. And so that maturity in terms of the leveling system makes it more predictable as an engineer. You can kind of tell, okay, if I join this company, within this general period of time, I should be able to reach this level, You can plan your career progression better. Whereas I would say in Singapore and Southeast Asia, because there are fewer tech companies that have become big and really made it big on the world stage, there haven't been as mature career pathways for people. And it's only starting to appear now as some of the companies are starting to become unicorns and start to IPO and exit in larger ways. And so what does this mean? this naturally means that one, there's a larger concentration of expertise in tech or with software engineering or otherwise in Silicon Valley. At the same time, it also means that there's more opportunity to leapfrog maybe, or even be a pioneer in Singapore and Southeast Asia, right? Because for, if there's a lack of talent, then you just have to be the leader, essentially, because if you're not leading, then nobody else is leading, right? So, right, when the guys who started Google, right, they were not like super senior software engineers when they started Google. They were just master students. Yet they had to adopt these leadership positions because they were the pioneers. So the similar opportunities exist in Southeast Asia today.
Yeah, amazing. What will you say is your personal goals as a founder of a tech education company and even as a software engineer? Has your personal goals changed, or or would it align all these years since the past until now? Or?
Yeah, so fascinating. I think since I moved back to Singapore, one of my aspirations has been to build a successful business. And why was I motivated to, and in fact, it wasn't even tied to education when I started.
Yeah.
It was just, I want to build a successful business. Initially, I thought I wanted to do something in an area that affects positive change, areas like healthcare, education, food, housing, these kinds of areas. And so when I started, I actually started in healthcare doing my first startup. But the motivation was this, the motivation for building a business was this. I felt like if we look at the Fortune 500 companies in the world today, the biggest companies in the world, the majority of them are from the US and China. And what this means is that these companies are MNCs, multinational companies, and they are bringing in revenue from the rest of the world to their countries, US and China, to enrich the US and Chinese people, which is great. And there are a lot of migrants who go to the US to be part of these companies and in search for a better life. But what that means is that for developing countries, especially for those of us in Southeast Asia, if we are not having our own MNCs, which are bringing in capital from the rest of the world, earning capital from the rest of the world, then we are more of so-called servants or so-called workers of the MNCs that are in the US and China. And then it makes it harder for us to bring in the revenue to invest, bring in more revenue to invest in our fundamentals of our societies like healthcare and education, which then help us have more equal opportunities to compete with other Western countries or more developed countries in the world.
Yes.
And so it was really motivated by this desire to not just my own company, but to inspire and to support other entrepreneurs to build these businesses that can become multinational companies from Southeast Asia, such that our governments can invest in healthcare and education to give our people better lives. And right, because we have to grow the pie first before we can redistribute the pie. And we need more businesses, local businesses that can help grow the pie. So that was the main motivation. And I looked around at different ideas. I started in healthcare. I thought about logistics. And ultimately, the opportunity that I felt was the best match for my background and my motivations and my experiences was Rocket Academy, essentially, tech education.
Amazing. Yeah. And I think from education, you would spawn or you create many businesses from there.
Exactly. It has a double effect, right? One, it can be the business that helps grow the pie and inspire other businesses, but also two, we are developing our human capital who can then go on and grow the tech industry as well.
Yes. Amazing. So Kai, tell me about Singapore. I think a lot of is coming from Malaysia. They see Singapore as the shining beacon, especially for tech. I mean, what's the thing with Singapore? Right? I mean, what's Singapore's strategy for techies? Are you getting a lot of Malaysians coming over? What's the scene like?
Yeah, I can't speak to how many Malaysians are coming over. I don't actually know.
Yes.
But I know that Singapore wants to position itself as the tech hub for at least the region. And I think some strategies that Singapore has been doing to achieve that are, for example, offering tax incentives for multinational companies to set up their regional headquarters in Singapore. And there are other reasons why MNCs may like to put their regional headquarters in Singapore. I think stability, I think tax incentives help. I think the English language and maybe some perceptions around the quality of talent in Singapore can help as well. What is it like in Singapore? I think it is really, right now, what it feels like is that there are so many companies that want to set up their regional HQ here, and we just don't have enough tech talent yet.
Okay.
And so Rocket Academy, being a software engineering bootcamp, we try and fill this gap. And of course, universities and polytechnics and other bootcamps also exist to try and fill this gap. And Singapore also offers work visas for people in the region to come to Singapore and earn the so-called higher salaries from these companies in Singapore and fill the tech talent gap. These companies are also, a lot of them are open to hiring remotely. So we have tech teams in Malaysia, we have tech teams in Indonesia and Vietnam and Philippines, for example, that are working for companies that might have their regional headquarters in Singapore. Yeah, were there any specific aspects of the tech in Singapore? Yeah.
So going on your topic you mentioned, right? You're saying that the future is remote. Companies, regional companies in Singapore or Singaporean firms will hire people in Indonesia and Malaysia. And not going to sugarcoat anything. It's because those guys are cheap labor. Correct me if I'm wrong. So if there's an equally talented guy in Singapore and Malaysia, two talented guy in Indonesia and Malaysia, who's doing it for half the price of a Singaporean. Companies hire Singaporeans developers when they hire Malaysian developers. Let's just say, assuming
absolutely.
Indonesia,
there are a few reasons for this.
Like you expand it out to Indonesia and then you train a bunch of really smart people. They're like, okay, great, Indonesians. So why can't Singaporeans hire the Indonesians, right? Why they hire Singaporeans?
Great point. Well, I think there are two main factors here to consider. One is just that the Singapore government has some requirements. So if you're a multinational company that sets up in Singapore, you have to have a certain percentage of Singaporeans.
Okay.
Something like that. Yeah. So that's just the government requirement.
Yeah.
But the other thing, if we talk about free market forces, I think yes, labor in developing countries is generally cheaper than labor in developed countries. And so salaries generally in Malaysia and Indonesia are lower than salaries in Singapore, for example, on average. And I think when companies are looking to hire, especially, and I'm speaking primarily for software engineers here, maybe not for other roles, but for software engineers, I think one of the often overlooked skills or important competencies of software engineers is communication skills.
Yes.
And so when deciding, if I were deciding whether to hire whether it's a Malaysian or Indonesian or Singaporean, I'm not just looking for the person who commands or who asks for the lowest salary. Because there is a difference, even within junior software engineers, right? We don't just need someone who can be a code monkey. We don't need someone who I have to say, okay, write this code, write exactly the code, then they type it out. I'm not looking for someone to type for me.
Okay.
Right? I'm looking for someone to solve problems for me. And it doesn't matter where they're from, as long as they can communicate clearly and solve the problems effectively, then that's great. And if they're more affordable, then absolutely I would go ahead and hire them. But I think so that's the consideration. So that's why Singaporeans really need to watch out.
And also you have that physical interaction that companies want, I guess, if they're in Singapore.
Oh, you mean being in person?
Yeah.
That could also be a plus. But I think companies are more, especially since COVID, companies are more and more open to hiring remotely if the workers have the right competencies. And so Singaporeans have to watch out, because Singaporeans need to know that Singaporeans can't take for granted that, oh, just because you're in Singapore, you deserve to get these jobs.
Yeah.
It is really, right, the reason companies would hire a Singaporean, just like a company would hire a Malaysian or Indonesian over anybody else, is because they're actually better at the job.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
And better, I think a lot of times comes, especially for software engineers, comes down to communication skills.
Okay. I want to ask a very common experience I heard from even my Malaysian friends, right?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing you know Malaysian people. Do you?
A few, I know a few. I have a few Malaysian friends.
Okay. Maybe just your thoughts about it then, if you don't know too much Malaysians, even. Singapore companies like to hire, the perception is Singapore companies like to hire Malaysians because they're more desperate, they're more hungry, and they feel that Singaporeans are too entitled and they're too comfortable in their zone, whereas Malaysians like willing to work for lower salaries and they're willing to do more. Is that and therefore Singaporean companies pay Malaysians much lower and that kind of thing. Just wanted to hear perceptions about that, if you have any thoughts about it.
I think, I mean, it's supply and demand, right? So if I certainly think that it's I think that first of all, I think Singaporeans do work hard. So I don't think it's fair to Singaporeans to say that Singaporeans don't work hard.
Yeah.
But I can imagine that Malaysians are just as hungry, if not hungrier, and to succeed. And so I would say, if for any Malaysian listeners, right, if you believe you're good, then by all means, like, negotiate a higher salary.
Okay.
Because there is, if you really are good, then like there's no reason why the company shouldn't want to pay you a higher salary.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'm just throwing out there because I've been hearing some friends and people are just saying out their perception, and that's interesting. Moving on.
I like that, right? I want to hire, as an employer myself, I want to hire people who are hungry. So if whether that person's Malaysian or Singaporean, I would see that as a positive point.
Okay. Moving on to a very interesting topic that I personally face even at the Hacker Collective, talking to Malaysians here, right? Is universities in Singapore doing such a bad job? I mean, like, if someone came to you now and said, hey, I should go to Rocket Academy or should I go to NUS? What are you going to tell them? Are you going to say go to both?
I'm a little biased, but yeah, no. So I tell people this. Great question. Yeah, I tell people this. I say they're well, and it depends. Are you talking? It depends whether we're talking about people who are pre-university or people who have already graduated from university as well.
Pre-university, because they're making the choice now. Do I go to university or I go to Rocket Academy? Right.
Great question. Yeah. So usually I say this.
Right.
There are two main reasons, in my opinion, to go to university, and other people have different opinions, so this is just my own opinion.
Yeah.
Right. There are two main reasons for university. One is brand. Okay. Because if you have a good university on your resume, people give you the benefit of the doubt. And it's not just when you're job seeking, it's also when if you're doing your own business, or if you are trying to sell something, right? If you have a good university stamp on your resume, it just helps in giving people confidence in you as a person. So that's one thing, brand. Okay. The second is network. Network in that if you go to a school that is a magnet for good people, then naturally by making friends with these people will go out and do good things in their careers, and that can be helpful in your own career if you are looking for help on a particular thing or anything, right? Starting your own business or partnering or looking for jobs. So network is the second point, right? So brand and network is the primary reason, I think, to the primary benefits, I would say, of going to. Of course, you're going to learn stuff, right? You choose to major in a particular field, but you could also learn that stuff elsewhere. Yeah. So the why learn it at university specifically? I would say it's the brand and the network that are the most tangible values. Right? And with Rocket Academy, we strive to achieve those same things. Right. So we recognize that brand and network, it's not just about university. It's like, why do you choose a school in general? I think brand and network are some of the top reasons.
Yeah.
And so with Rocket Academy, we're trying to achieve similar high standard of brand and network. And how do we achieve that? We achieve that by being selective. We will only accept students that meet a certain bar of coding aptitude and communication skills. Because we know that in order for Rocket Academy to do well in this as a school, we have to be able to attract the best students. And what I've learned over the years is that the best students want to be with the other best students. And so we have to have our bar at a high enough level where everybody who's going to Rocket Academy recognizes that everybody else here is good. And all the employers who are looking to Rocket Academy to hire, they need to know that all the good people are coming out of Rocket Academy.
Yeah.
And we're still early on that journey. We're a new school. We've been around for about 1.5 years, but I think we're well on our way there. Our batches, quality of our students seems to be increasing every single batch. And so for someone deciding between, say, for example, university and Rocket Academy, that's what I would pose to them. Right? Is the university is 4 years and it's more expensive. Right? So is that time that you spend in university, is it worth it? Is the brand and network worth it to spend that time and money? Or would you rather get a good brand and network from Rocket Academy, and become a software engineer in a shorter amount of time and then progress in your career from there? So how much do you value that brand and network that you're going to get from university over Rocket Academy's brand and network is what I would say.
Yeah. So basically what you're telling them is, taking brand network aside, right? You can do as good a job as the university in educating someone in 1 year, let's say, rather as compared to 4 years. Basically, you're saying you can do it faster and better than the university, right? To someone who's hearing this, even someone who's not familiar with boot camps, right? What's the catch? What's the
catch? Great question. Right? Yeah. So I would disagree that Rocket Academy is doing the same thing in a short amount of time. Right? Universities and boot camps are fundamentally different. Universities teach computer science. Boot camps primarily teach software engineering. And the two are slightly different, right? One is more theoretical. Universities tend to be more theoretical. Boot camps tend to be more practical. And to be a successful software engineer, actually you need to know both. So you can't just do one of them. So going to university, for example, like my own experience at university studying computer science, most of my practical knowledge that I needed to succeed as a software engineer, I learned during internships. I did not learn in the classes. And similarly for bootcamp students, for example, at Rocket Academy, even if they learn the practical knowledge and get a job as a software engineer, to progress in your career as a software engineer, you need to pick up more computer science. And so what I would say is this: universities front load the computer science knowledge you supposedly need to know. Actually, most of it I still haven't needed to know, but it's still interesting, right? They front load the computer science knowledge, and then you go and pick up the practical stuff later.
Yeah.
But you need the practical stuff to get a job.
Yes.
Whereas with boot camps like Rocket Academy, we front load the practical stuff such that you can get a job as fast as possible, a good job, and have the right foundations. And then after you got that job as a software engineer, then you need to go and pick up the computer science knowledge yourself on the side, part-time, whether you're doing some courses online or whether you're learning it from your colleagues at work. You still need to pick up the computer science stuff, but you can do it at your own pace while you're working. So it's just a different structure of learning, but at the end of the day, you still need to learn both the computer science and the practical software engineering knowledge.
Okay. So to someone hearing that, they'd be like, whoa, great, I can get a job faster.
Absolutely, yeah.
Affordable.
Exactly. That's my hypothesis, right? Why would you choose a 4-year? Right now, I think the main reasons for choosing a 4-year university over something like Rocket Academy is the brand and the network. If you believe that the university you're going to is going to give you a stronger brand and network, which is going to help you succeed later in life, by all means, go for the university. But if you believe that Rocket Academy's brand and network is good and you want to progress in your career faster, I think Rocket Academy, I'm biased because I come
Well,
from
but
Rocket
it's a
Academy,
no-brainer. That's
but
what you're saying, right? I mean, it's very clear cut to as
well, not
someone who's
necessarily,
curious.
because Rocket Academy is still a new school. We're still developing our brand and network. Of course, we still have a long way to go. So I can imagine, right? It's going to be difficult to compete against the Stanfords of the world, where they're so established and they, the brand means a lot at this point, supposedly. So we're still working on it. But in the future, where we're going is we're trying to be a very strong brand and network, such that, right, it would make sense to choose Rocket Academy over many universities.
I want to ask about, especially on the university side, right?
Yeah.
COVID has disrupted them. What are universities doing to compete against Rocket Academy? Or what do they plan to do? Or do they plan to say they're not a competitor, they're a separate branch? We're just going to do our own thing. Or are they going to launch clones of Rocket Academy under their own brand? Because I've seen universities in Malaysia do something like that, right?
Yeah.
What's the landscape like?
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I think it's a bit presumptuous to think that universities are competing against Rocket. They think Rocket Academy is a threat. I think most universities have never heard of Rocket Academy yet, and they probably don't even care
I'm
about.
sure they have.
But I don't know. But I do see universities responding to, for example, what we're seeing with COVID is that a lot of people are questioning, especially with remote university learning, right? They're like, why am I paying so much and spending so much time to go to university when it's almost like doing watching online courses?
Yeah.
And so the top ranked universities are still getting a lot of applicants, but the long tail universities are struggling. And what I see the longer tail universities doing to adapt to this, they are starting to think about how they can make their courses more practical, right? Because people are wondering, why would I pay so much to watch these online courses when I can't get a job? And so what the longer tail of universities are doing is they're starting to make their courses more practical, so to say. And for software engineering specifically, one of the strategies that I see some universities doing is partnering with so-called white label bootcamp providers to provide bootcamp education, but the university chops their brand on it. And we see this in the US. We've seen this with, for example, a company called Trilogy, which is the so-called white label bootcamp solution. And then we have universities that chop their brand on it, and they say, okay, right, University of such and such offers a 3-month bootcamp, and it's actually the education is provided by the bootcamp company, but the university puts their brand on it.
Yeah.
So that's one reaction. I also see universities like NUS, for example, starting to offer more postgraduate courses to help people pick up tech skills. Yeah, but they're still very academic. Generally speaking, I would say they're more academically focused than what a bootcamp would be.
Okay. I want to get to a question that's been also bugging me quite a bit, which is the idea of the concept of boot camps and educating people, right? Because tech education is not new. You've had Code Academy, one of the very early pioneers, where I learned my first coding back 10 years ago.
Code Academy is great.
10 years ago, right?
Absolutely.
The whole idea of making online learning democratized, and I believe Rocket Academy as well is online, right? And that's the way you scale out and reach a lot of people to solve this problem we're facing, right? Of shortage of tech talents. The question here, my question is this, which is, after 10 years and so many innovations in the scene, and I believe even boot camps before Rocket Academy, right, in Singapore and Malaysia we had boot camps as well, right? Why are we still facing this problem? And what's to say that either Rocket Academy or Hacker Collective is going to solve this problem where previous people in the past 5 years, I'm assuming, haven't solved?
Great question. Right. So you mentioned 2 types of tech education providers out there, right? You mentioned the online self-serve ones, like Code Academy, and you also mentioned the traditional boot camps that have been around for 5-10 years. And so online, my thinking is this: the online education providers, self-serve ones, are not sufficient for most people to get jobs.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Why is that? It's because when you're stuck on a problem, you have no one to ask. It's that simple. Like if I'm going through an online
Yes.
course with a self-serve and I'm stuck on a problem, everybody gets stuck on problems.
It's a forum.
And if you have no one to
forum.
ask, yeah, there's a forum, yeah, but then you don't have anyone you can talk to clarify.
Yeah. Okay.
Per se.
Yeah.
And that turns a lot of people off. That's why platforms like a lot of the MOOC platforms, they have over a 90% dropout rate.
Oh,
Because
I didn't know that. Wow. Okay.
right, yeah, not a small percentage of people actually complete those courses.
Okay.
Right, because they just get frustrated, they get stuck, they feel like, and then they move on to something else. And then the traditional bootcamp companies, why have they not been able to solve this problem? One, because it's a really big problem, right? The demand for software engineers is far outpacing the supply.
Okay.
And two is I think that traditional bootcamps are not set up to scale as much.
I see. There have been traditional bootcamps in Singapore. Right? There's been a lot of bootcamps.
There have been traditional bootcamps, right?
Okay.
There are a handful of traditional bootcamps in Singapore.
Okay.
And they haven't. One is that they haven't been set up to scale as much. They're primarily offline, center-based. Okay. Two is that I don't think that these, in personal opinion, I don't think that these bootcamps have been able to achieve the outcomes that is generating more demand, that on the outcomes that generate more demand from more people to join these bootcamps. And so what Rocket Academy is trying to do is we're trying to say, hey, our graduates are getting jobs at all these top companies, right? If you see yourself in that kind of position in the future, this is for you. Whereas with more traditional bootcamps that tend to be shorter, I think part of it is the short nature, part of it is the less selective nature of the bootcamps. They aren't producing this quality of outcomes on the same quality of outcomes on average. Yeah. And I think that makes them less attractive to prospective people who want to get into this industry.
Okay.
So the way I see Rocket Academy succeeding where the others have not is that one, we have more guided learning aspects. So students can ask questions, right? So joining Rocket Academy instead of online learning will better guarantee that you'll get a job as a software engineer. And the second thing is that we are more comprehensive and selective, which I think can attract more people that weren't attracted before to get into this field because we have higher quality outcomes on average. Yeah. And we're online, so we can scale.
Yes, exactly. I think the online part even, because Next Academy, I know in Malaysia, and they are online too, but previously I think boot camps in Malaysia were not online and they were doing well and they were great. I'm saying they were great, but I'm saying like, where's more of them? We need more of these guys, right? Because physical just tends to limit so much. And that's the challenge. Yeah. Another bottleneck, right? Back just answering your question about why have bootcamps not solved this problem? Right? Why have universities not solved this problem? Well, universities are constrained. They can't grow that fast because they're center constrained. But also, and also it's a really big problem. There's huge demand for the software engineers that can't be filled easily. Right, but I think a lot of it also depends on the supply of people coming into the school. Yes. And this is something I don't have good numbers on, but I know for Rocket Academy, we are currently selective. We're selective in the sense that we screen people for coding aptitude and communication skills before we accept them into our bootcamp. Okay. Why do we do that? Because we know that those are the traits of strong software engineers, and it's difficult to train for those things, the aptitude and the communication skills, during a course like whether it's a bootcamp course or a university course. It's difficult to train those fundamental skills, and a lot of those skills, in my opinion, are trained during K-12 education, right, over the course of one's childhood, that entire years of growing up. And so one of the possible limitations to why bootcamps and universities have not solved this problem yet is because our K-12 education maybe has not prepared people with the skills to succeed in these kind of fast-paced tech roles. Yeah. And governments are reacting to this now. They're reacting to this now. They're introducing more project-based learning in K-12. They're introducing more problem solving, even coding, but it's going to take some years to catch up. Yeah. And one thing that was just crossing my mind just now, as you were saying about this supply, right? I just tell people we don't have a shortage of tech people. We have a
Mm,
shortage of tech talents. Because I
yes.
speak to companies and they're like, you couldn't find anyone? I'm like, yeah, but you just had 30 people apply to you last week. What do you mean you couldn't find
Mm,
anyone? Like,
yeah,
no one's
yeah,
good.
yeah.
No, so and these are all fresh graduates.
Yeah. This is a fascinating
That's the
topic
thing.
that I thought about quite a bit. I think there are two kinds of software engineers in the world. There are the factory worker software engineers, and there are the knowledge worker software engineers.
Okay. Okay.
Right? I'm just trying to.
No, it's good. It's good.
This is binary. There's some space in the middle,
Yes.
but
Yes.
generally speaking, I see there are two kinds of software
Yes.
engineers in the world, and typically, right? Typically, factory worker software engineer, you can imagine, right? A factory worker, right? You have one hammer and you hammer that thing or that
Yes.
nail over and over again, right? You know one language or you know one framework, and you can write the same code again and again and again.
Oh,
That's a factory worker, right?
okay.
But given a general problem that the factory worker engineer may not be able to connect that problem to the solution, the optimal solution, may not be able to evaluate whether that problem is even worth solving in the first place for the company, right? So the factory worker is really someone who can take a hammer and nail hammer.
Yes.
The knowledge worker software engineer is more of the general purpose problem solver. So they are people who can communicate with their peers to figure out what actually is this problem. Is it worth solving? If it is worth solving, what are our options for solutions? And what solution gives us the best desired outcome? And then if they decide, once they decide what's the best solution, they can actually go and do it, regardless of what it is, regardless of what language or framework it is, they'll just pick it up and make it happen.
Yes.
And everybody, I mean, most companies would love to hire more knowledge worker software, especially the tech companies would love
Yes.
to hire more knowledge worker, but they just can't find enough of these knowledge worker software engineers. There, I think, in my opinion, there are more than enough factory worker software engineers in the world. People who have learned how to type a specific language or framework to build a very specific thing and can just do that over and over again. But what I find to be lacking in so-called factory worker software engineers is the communication skills, is the general problem solving and logical skill.
Yes. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong as well, but in Malaysia, I see that problem of too many juniors, not enough seniors. So juniors tend to be a bit more factory workers. Seniors who have more, and sometimes it comes with experience to get that kind of general purpose. It comes to experience, right? Not enough. You can't teach those things sometimes, right?
I'd say there's a common misconception between what it means to be a junior engineer and what it means to be a senior engineer.
Yeah.
I think in my conception, right, there are two dimensions to this. Right. One is your experience. Like, okay, how long have you been coding? Like, how many patterns have you seen? How well can you pattern match?
Yeah.
The other dimension is communication skills. Right. How clearly to communicate? How easily are you able to communicate your ideas clearly with your team? And so, in my opinion, junior and senior is really the experience level.
Okay.
But often, some people conflate the communication thing with being junior and senior. They think that, oh, okay, if you can't communicate well, then you're a junior engineer, right? But actually, you can have junior engineers with not as much experience that can communicate really well. And these people are great. So everybody wants that kind of software engineer. Yeah. But regardless of how much experience you have, nobody wants a software engineer that cannot communicate well.
I see. Even though he's a rock star developer,
even if you're a rockstar engineer, if you can't communicate with your team to build the right thing, then nobody will.
Do your own thing then. But he can build his own thing.
Yeah, you can do your own thing. Yeah, but software very rarely is an individual endeavor. Software almost always is built using a team, and you need communication skills for that.
Yes, yes.
And so what I would recommend for people, it's not that companies, it's not, in my opinion, it's not necessarily that companies don't want to hire junior engineers. It's that they want to hire people with strong communication skills. In fact, what I've observed in Singapore is that companies are more than happy to hire people who have very little experience as software engineers. As long as they can communicate well, they can show that they can learn quickly.
Interesting. Very interesting. I say that only because I have experience with people who suck at communication. And okay, yes, there's a point where communication gets really bad, that it's really, really off. But people who are just not good communicators, but okay, they just work hard. Oh, and then the
Yeah.
team's like, okay, you know what? Don't talk to us. Just do your little small thing. Just deliver on time.
Yeah.
They still
Yeah.
can talk. They still can talk. It's just that they're not the
Yeah.
best, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And
And
they think they get the work
many,
done.
yeah, and there are many companies will hire people who fit that profile.
Yeah.
But I would say in terms of the more aspirational jobs for
Ah,
software engineers, then communication skills become more important.
okay. Makes sense, especially with the more prominent companies and the bigger startups and all that.
Yeah, exactly. It doesn't mean that factory worker software engineers won't get jobs, but it just means it's more difficult for them to get jobs because there's so many factory workers, but there aren't as many knowledge workers.
Interesting. Actually, since you're on this point talking about factory workers,
Yeah.
and I've heard before blue collar software, because a lot of people think, oh, software is so amazing, but you actually don't get paid very well in a factory worker job. And you actually get this pretty average or pretty mediocre job. I mean, can you share your thoughts about this role of factory worker jobs for software? I mean, a lot of people don't know this. They think software is all sexy and great. But what's the reality of factory worker jobs out there? Is there a lot of them out there? Do they get paid really shitty? Is there really the bad side to software where you say, don't join software because actually it pays very badly. It's horrible. It's a lousy job. Do marketing or something. What's the scenario in that? You know what I mean?
Well, I think it comes down to career growth. As a software engineer, are you being paid to be a code monkey, so-called code monkey, that is just asked to do repetitive tasks? If you are just doing repetitive tasks over and over again, you are not learning. And if you're not learning, you're not becoming more valuable as an employee. And if you're not becoming more valuable as an employee, then your pay is not going to go up.
Okay, yes.
And so when someone asks me, like, should I what kind of software engineering job is a bad software engineering job? What kind of software engineering job is a good software engineering job? I would say a software engineering job that helps you learn and progress as a software engineer that's solving increasingly complex technical problems or increasingly complex business problems. That's a great job because you are getting more valuable as an employee. And if you switch companies now, you could get a pay raise, essentially. Whereas if you are someone if your company is a place where they say, stay in your lane, just build this one thing over and over and over again, then that's a bad sign, right? If you feel that your learning is plateauing, then you know generally it's probably time to switch because there's so many other software jobs where you can keep learning forever. You're being paid to learn. There's no need to stay at a job where you're just being stagnant.
I want to ask a follow-up question on this.
Yes.
Is it true that startups, small teams, building startups, hire a lot of, require a lot of aspirational software roles and they learn a lot, they do a lot of stuff. Whereas corporate companies like banks just hire software engineers, or need a lot of code monkeys. Is that true? They need it. Who's going to be the monkey if no one wants to be the monkey? Someone needs to be the monkey. And small companies who are small teams, they need everyone good. But big firms, they need code monkeys.
Yeah. I would say, okay, with regard to startups, for sure. Yeah, I would say startups, right? You need, also at the early stages of building a startup, you're not building like crazily complicated. Most of the time, you're building an MVP. You just want to see it, whether users like it. So in that sense, you don't necessarily need super senior advanced software engineers or the top software engineers. In any case, you just need people who can communicate well, can adapt quickly.
Okay.
And for bigger companies, and you gave the example of banks, I would say
any others,
in the past, right, in legacy, in the past, right, before the current age of tech startups, I would say it was more okay for IT departments to be more of a cost center. Right? IT departments are like the guys who fix the networking and the printers and all that, and you just want to minimize that cost because they're not generating more revenue for the business. And I think that in recent years, especially in recent years, traditional companies have had to adapt because they realize, hey, if we are not innovating in tech, we are falling behind and the startups are going to start to eat our lunch. And of course, companies like banks still have an advantage because they have the government regulations. They have a bigger moat right? So it may take longer for them to realize this, but I think they're realizing it nonetheless, which is that they need to pay more to get the top tech talent that can solve their problems and not just hire code monkeys. Of course, there are still many outsourced, relatively factory worker like jobs at these larger, more traditional companies, the more factory worker like software jobs at these larger, more traditional companies. And for now, right, they're helping to make the company run. But I think banks and other more traditional companies that are more and more starting to realize that, hey, we need innovation and we need to pay for that. We need to develop a strong tech culture so we can attract some of the best software engineers that can help us innovate in tech to stay ahead of the competition.
Okay, that makes sense. To your students or to people who want to get into tech, what's the key thing they need to know? You know, how do they know that they're suited for this? How do they feel assured that, okay, it's tech for me? What's the simple thing they can do, or what's metrics or what traits they need to have, you know, to be successful?
I think the best, there are two questions there. One is what you can do, and two is what you need to be successful. What you need to do, I think the best thing you can do if you're even thinking about going into this field is just try it. Just start coding. There are so many free resources online. Mingyu mentioned Code Academy before. There are others like Khan Academy. Rocket Academy offers a free introductory basics course that anybody from anywhere can sign up and try. It's a 6-week part-time course. You get a dedicated section leader who will guide you along with your peers for networking in the course. So just try it. See if you like it. If you like it, then that's great. Then you keep going. If you don't like it, well, then you know, right, that maybe it's not for you. Right. What traits do you need to be a successful software engineer in tech? Communication skills. We've talked about that before. So we need to, when you're writing code, you need to make sure your code is understandable by other people. Right. So both verbal and written communication is important. Second thing is grit. You need to know that you are going to encounter obstacles. I even during university, right? I think all the computer science university students can empathize with this, which is like and all the software engineers actually can empathize with this, where everyone is going to get stuck on bugs, and it's going to be very frustrating. So you need to have grit to power through when you're stuck on a problem, just to keep thinking, okay, why would this be the case? And then you find the next step. Why would that be the case? And then you keep working backward to find where the problem is. And the third thing is logical thinking. Which it's difficult to measure. I don't know how much logical thinking I have, but you will generally get a sense of it once you start coding. Like, okay, am I able to be patient? Am I able to say, okay, if I see this problem A, that probably means that there's this problem B. If that's the problem B, then I just need to fix this thing C to solve it. So that kind of logical thinking is helpful. So grit, communication, grit, and logical thinking.
Okay, that's good. And I completely agree on the grit part, especially because a lot, and sometimes you just bang the head on for like days on end. But I think over time, you know,
everyone goes through that. Everyone goes through that.
Yeah, that's the killer part. So when you look at companies now, because Rocket Academy is, of course, matches the students as well to companies and all that. Do you see a shift where companies now don't care about that NUS certificate anymore, and they say, you know what? You're good, you're qualified, and Rocket Academy, okay, maybe it's a new company and don't know Rocket Academy yet, right? You're banking purely on quality of the candidate, right? Oh, you can do it for my job, I'll hire you on board. You don't have computer science, sure, but I'll hire you on board, and like you have the fundamentals. Because I believe fundamentally Rocket Academy is banking on the fact that it produces quality talents and not just name recognition, right? So you can produce quality talents for companies. Are companies then gonna neglect university brand name anymore and say, forget NUS, Rocket Academy is good enough?
I mean, when hiring, the easiest way to hire people is to look at signals. And I'm sure all the people who have hired people before have felt this way. The easiest way to decide whether someone is qualified is to look at signals, whether it's the school, whether it's past companies that they worked at, without even looking at what they did. If you just look at the name of the school, the name of the companies they worked at, that can give you a proxy for how good people are. And so
it's fresh. It's a fresh person.
And everybody does that, for better, for worse.
Yeah.
And so to answer your question, is our brand names like NUS going to become less valuable because Rocket Academy exists? I don't think so, because it still means something. If you went to a top school, right, companies will still think that, okay, well, this one person went to a top school, therefore cannot be so bad. I might as well give them an interview.
Okay. Okay.
But it doesn't mean that if you don't have that brand name school, that you cannot get an interview.
Yeah.
But it is more challenging, right? Because you gotta, recruiters won't just be able to check it off immediately. Oh, top school, oh, top company, pass, right? You have to demonstrate something else. And Rocket Academy is supporting students with that right now. One, by making sure that they have very clear software engineering experience on their resume, right? So when you graduate from Rocket Academy, the first half of your resume is all the projects and the details of how you solve these problems, how good a communicator you are, right? How good of a software engineer you are. And we're also, that's one thing, is the experience on the resume. The second thing that we're helping students with is referrals, because right now Rocket Academy is relatively new, so we need to bootstrap that brand by using my own personal networks and our team at Rocket Academy's networks to refer our students into jobs. And the idea is over time, as these people go to the good companies, they become successful, the Rocket Academy brand will mean more. And then as the brand becomes more strong, then recruiters will start to say, oh, in Rocket Academy, okay, pass. They don't even have to look at anything else. Just say, oh, Rocket Academy, pass. Just like they would do for a school like NUS. So that's what we're trying to achieve, is that brand recognition as well.
Okay. My assumption was always that companies are just so frustrated with even finding talent. This shortage of talent, to the point where they say, you know what, forget the brand, I don't care. Just tell me what you have done, and if it looks
exactly
good,
you don't need the brand, but the brand still helps.
Okay, yeah, the brand still helps. Okay. So when you look at companies right now in Singapore, my assumption for the long term of especially when there's more developers in Malaysia, Indonesia, Vietnam, Philippines, is that Singapore will become a hub of more senior developers, and they'll just outsource all the junior work to all these foreign countries. So because you still have limited Singaporeans, right? And you can't depend on just immigration alone.
I think if that were the case, then Singaporeans would be screwed, because Singaporeans need jobs as well, right? Not all Singaporeans are senior engineers.
Yeah, I see. But do you see that in the landscape of Southeast Asia? How is the tech scene going to move like in Southeast Asia in terms of developers, right? Because you see that in Russia and America. Russians are like, I mean, look at Fiverr, right? They just outsource all this really solid but cheap talent kind of thing like that. Right? So what's the landscape of companies throughout Southeast Asia? I mean, what would Singaporean companies do when they know that there's talent out there and everything's becoming
absolutely digital, they will try and hire, right? I know regional companies that have set up engineering offices in Malaysia, right? For example, places like Penang. I know they've set up offices in Vietnam. I know they've set up offices in Bandung in Indonesia. And so people are already looking elsewhere for talent, and they're just taking what they can get right now. But I think that regardless of where the talent come from, if they can find a strong talent pool with stronger communication skills that are also software engineers, they will take them. Yeah. Regardless of where they're from, whether it's in Singapore or Vietnam and Malaysia or anywhere else. Okay, no, that makes sense. And so for anyone who's listening, right, it's just, wherever there's talent, the companies will hire you. So I wouldn't worry about which country you're in. As long as you're good, you will be fine. Okay.
Last few questions for you before I give you a chance maybe to say anything you want to share. What's the future of Rocket Academy? I mean, you guys are new. You guys have your plans, right? I mean, what's the journey been like, and what's the future? Because I understand also that cost is a factor. It's hard to still sell, and I believe Rocket Academy is cheap, but it's not like dirt cheap. It's not free like those online MOOCs out there, right? It's only for $9 on Udemy or something like that. Tell me about the challenges you guys face now, and then also what's the future of Rocket Academy in the next few years?
So the journey, right? Rocket Academy has been around since early 2020. And the journey has been in training our initial students, getting them jobs, making sure we develop a robust curriculum that we can then use to teach larger numbers of students. And so right now we are at about, we're teaching about 20 new bootcamp students. We're teaching we've taught over 600 students in our free introductory course.
Yeah.
And we've taught over 60 students in our bootcamp course so far, with a few tens of students joining every month.
Yeah.
And that's where we've gotten to date, right? It's just about teaching, making sure our students are successful, building up the curriculum. The challenges moving forward are going to be with scaling up, because in the early days, it was me and my partner Akira who were teaching all of the classes ourselves directly, right? And both of us are relatively senior engineers, or relatively more experienced engineers.
Yeah.
And as we scale up, if we want to teach more people, we can't have very senior engineers with every small group of students. It just wouldn't, financially, it may not be very sustainable.
Yeah.
And so the way we need to scale up is to have the experienced engineers develop the curriculum, all the videos, all the resources, all the materials that students can self-serve.
Yeah.
And develop all the teaching resources for the section leaders who may be software engineers with 1 or 2 years of experience to also deliver the course effectively with minimal guidance. And so that is the biggest challenge right now, is developing almost this manufacturing system where we get good raw inputs, and they have this manufacturing process where they then become good software engineers.
Yes.
And then they graduate and they become successful in their careers, right?
Yes.
And so that the challenge is in almost developing this manufacturing process.
Okay.
Where is Rocket Academy going in the longer term? We want to be the best software engineering school in the world.
Oh, that's a big
statement. Yeah, it's a big statement. And right, universities primarily teach computer science. Rocket Academy teaches software engineering.
Yes.
And so what we mean is we want to be an effective and efficient way for people to become software engineers, regardless of whether you already went to university or whether you're pre-university. Effective and efficient. Effective meaning that you can get a job out of this and get a great job out of this and good career. Efficient in that you do it in a relatively short amount of time, 6 months. And how are we going to do that? We're going to do that by being online. We're going to have this core curriculum that is developed by our experienced team of software engineers and educators. Yes. And we're going to have section leaders who can be software engineers with 1-2 years of experience anywhere in the world, who can subscribe to be section leaders, essentially contractors, to help deliver this curriculum to people in their local markets.
Yes.
Right? Malaysians can teach Malaysians, Mexicans can teach Mexicans, Japanese people can teach Japanese people, right? And all around the world, people are supporting their local tech economies because the software engineers are helping the next generation of people learn and become good software engineers, because the core curriculum coding is the same everywhere.
Yes.
So that's where we're trying to go. We're trying to develop this core curriculum, get a marketplace of instructors and students from around the world who can support their local economies and help fill this talent gap in the world.
Yes. Speaking about that, on that topic as well, since tech always evolves and moves all the time, right?
Yes.
One thing I know with universities, and let me know your thoughts about this, universities have a primary disadvantage to, let's say, Rocket Academy, whereby they're not as agile. They can't adapt their curriculum as much. They can't change as fast. And because of that, they're stuck delivering all the material on a year-by-year basis when they have to update every year or something. How do you guys manage a curriculum and be up to date? Or will you say, no, software is evergreen, we just have fundamental principles, don't need to update it all the time?
Yeah, it's funny because there are certain aspects of software that are very evergreen.
Okay.
The foundational concepts are quite evergreen, and I dare say they've been around for like tens of years and they have not changed. Like algorithms. Algorithms have not really changed very much in the last few decades. SQL, the programming language that's most commonly used in databases, has not changed. Fundamentally has not changed since like the 80s, 1980s. There are concepts like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript used on web development, right? That has not changed since like the early days, right? Barely changed. Right. So a lot of these concepts, right? The architecture of applications, having a front end and a back end, and even having a cloud, supporting it on the cloud, the fundamental architecture has not changed very much. So a lot of these topics have not changed. What is changing are the layers on top, like the specific front-end frameworks where React is the most popular front-end framework in the world today, but it hasn't changed. It's been dominant for at least 5 years now. And so, but of course there are new layers on top of it that keep changing every year or so. But with Rocket Academy, we're not so focused on teaching the new latest stuff that's changing every single month. We're more focused on teaching the foundations that don't change. Because what I believe is that for people who learn the foundations, they can pick up all the rest of it on their own.
Yeah.
But it's really important to get grounded in the foundations first. And so
Yeah.
for universities, I would say, yes, I mean, if they wanted to, they could actually change their curriculum faster. I think it's maybe just a lack, maybe, I think where there's a will, there's a way. They could actually do it if they wanted to. But that said, the foundation topics don't actually need to change that much.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's important is that we are teaching our students practical skills that they can use to get a job.
True.
And that doesn't necessarily mean all the fast changing stuff at the top. It doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means mostly the foundation.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's interesting way to put it. Yeah. That's interesting. I think more so I meant also things like just updating your language stack, right? I mean, universities still teach sometimes old languages. You still learn the foundations, but the tools you use, the tools that's given to you, I mean, adapt it towards what companies want. If not, then you just have to relearn the tools again. I mean, the tools.
Every school has to do that.
Still learn the newer ideas and
every school has to do that, or risk becoming more obsolete.
Yes. So Kai, I appreciate all the amazing tips and advice. I think a lot of people have gotten so much from there, and actually there's a lot more, but of course it's coming to lunch, and I think you're gonna really hit for lunch too. But I want to leave you with some final words to share with the audience, our audience of entrepreneurs, techies, creators, designers. Any messages from yourself that you want to share or about Rocket Academy?
For entrepreneurs, I think we gotta find the idea that is the best fit for our background. It's difficult to find that idea. For me, it took a few years. And so we just need to be prepared for that journey, especially for the earlier entrepreneurs. We just need to be prepared for that journey of discovery of what is the best idea that the market wants, that is the best fit for my background. And once you find that idea, hold on to it and don't, there are many times along the journey with Rocket Academy, where even though I knew it was the right idea for me, I had doubts.
Yeah.
And everybody will have doubts. And you just got to believe in the problem, believe in yourself, believe that you'll be able to overcome it. And as long as, as long as you're making progress, then you'll be okay.
Yeah.
With engineers, I would say, with prospective people who want to get into tech, looking for career opportunities, I would say, just start coding. Don't wait to start coding, right? See if you like it. Rocket Academy has of course, there are many free resources online. You've got a Hacker Collective also has resources to learn coding. Rocket Academy has a free course. Try it out. If you like it, great. Then you can go further. If you don't like it, then that's fine. At least you knew, and you can move on. And when you're an engineer, you got to have those three things: communication, grit, and logical thinking.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid. Try it out. And Rocket Academy is here to support. If you ever need to talk to anyone about the career or the industry, you can reach out to our team anytime at hello@rocketacademy.co, and you can register on our website for any of our courses.
Amazing. Awesome, Kai. Hey, no, it's great stuff.
Thank you so much.
I'm gonna pause the video and say bye-bye.
All right. See you.